Good morning. How you doing?
Good, thank you. Just going live, so hope you're doing well, and welcome everyone. Welcome to this morning's study group for Think and Grow New Rich, studying the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. So the aim of this group is to help everyone unprogram from the lack and scarcity consciousness, which is kind of all around us, and which books like this can help be like a roadmap out of. So hey Geraldine as well, and Tracy.
Morning, Geraldine. Morning, Tracy.
Hey, good morning. I had to get the lid for my coffee thing.
Ah,
I disappeared.
important matters. The
Oh
coffee.
God, yes.
So today we're reading about the. Yesterday we started the 13th chapter, which is all about the brain, and I find this fascinating. It's all about the way that our brain broadcasts to other people, to ourselves, and to infinite intelligence or the universe. So we're on page 189. Does anybody have a crazy desire to read?
A burning desire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll read. I haven't read in a while.
Oh,
Cool.
great.
Okay.
I love to listen to
189.
Tracy's voice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful voice.
I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
It's
I
really,
wish I could sing. Can you believe I can't sing? It's terrible.
oh,
Uh,
in a musical then. So it's the bottom of it's at the dramatic story of the brain.
okay, got it. Let
Yeah.
me get our.
I think so. I was looking at this earlier. I think that's where Jackie stops. Yeah. Let's just go from there.
Okay. Oops. I require silence for this next part.
I know it's like everyone's holding their breath. I'm just looking at the book to make sure that's where we got to.
Ready?
Yeah.
The dramatic story of the brain. Last but not least, man, with all of his boasted culture and education, understands little or nothing of the intangible force, the greatest of all the intangibles, of thought. He knows but little concerning the physical brain and its vast network of intricate machinery through which the power of thought is translated into its material equivalent. But he is now entering an age which shall yield enlightenment on the subject. Already, people of science have begun to turn their attention to the study of this stupendous thing called a brain, and, while they are still in the kindergarten stage of their studies, they have uncovered enough knowledge to know that the central switchboard of the human brain, the number of lines which connect the brain cells one with another, equal the figure 1, followed by 15 million ciphers. The figure is so stupendous, said Dr. C. Judson Herrick of the University of Chicago, that astronomical figures dealing with hundreds of millions of light years become insignificant by comparison. It has been determined that there are from 10 billion to 14 billion nerve cells in the human cerebral cortex, and we know that these are arranged in definite patterns. These arrangements are not haphazard, they are orderly. Recently developed methods of electrophysiology draw off action currents from very precisely located cells or fibers with microelectrodes, amplify them with radio tubes, and record potential differences to a millionth of a volt. It is inconceivable that such a network of intricate machinery should be in existence for the sole purpose of carrying on the physical functions incidental to growth and maintenance of the physical body. It is not likely that the same system, which gives billions of brain cells the media for communication one with another, provides also the means of communication with other intangible forces. After this book had been written, just before the manuscript went to the publisher, there appeared in the New York Times an editorial showing that at least one great university and one intelligent investigator in the field of mental phenomena are carrying on an organized research through which conclusions have been reached that parallel many of those described in this and the following chapter. Excuse me. The editorial briefly analyzed the work carried on by Dr. Rhine and his associates at Duke University. What is telepathy? A month ago, we cited on this page some of the remarkable results achieved by Professor Rhine and his associates in Duke University for more than 100,000 tests to determine the existence of telepathy and clairvoyance. These results were summarized in the first two articles in Harper's Magazine. In the second, which has now appeared, the author, E.H. Wright, attempts to summarize what has been learned, or what it seems reasonable to infer, regarding the exact nature of these extrasensory modes of perception. The actual existence of telepathy and clairvoyance now seems to some scientists enormously probable as the result of Rhine's experiments. Various percipients were asked to name as many cards in a special pack as they could without looking at them and without other sensory access to them. About a score of men and women were discovered who could regularly name so many of the cards correctly that there was not one chance in a million of their having done their feats by luck or accident. But how did they do them? These powers, assuming that they exist, do not seem to be sensory. There is no known organ for them. The experiments work just as well at distances of several hundred miles as they did in the same room. These facts also dispose, in Mr. Wright's opinion, of the attempt to explain telepathy or clairvoyance through any physical theory of radiation. All known forms of radiant energy decline inversely as the square of the distance traversed. Telepathy and clairvoyance do not, but they do vary through physical causes as other mental powers do. Contrary to widespread opinion, they do not improve when the percipient is asleep or half asleep, but on the contrary, when he is most wide awake and alert. Rhine discovered that a narcotic will invariably lower a percipient's score, while a stimulant will always send it higher. The most reliable performer apparently cannot make a good score unless he tries to do his best. One conclusion that Wright draws with some confidence is that telepathy and clairvoyance are really one and the same gift. That is, the faculty that sees a card face down on a table seems to be exactly the same one that reads a thought residing only in another mind. There are several grounds for believing this. So far, for example, the two gifts have been found in every person who enjoys either of them. In every one so far, the two have been of equal vigor, almost exactly. Screens, walls, distances have no effect at all on either. Wright advances from this conclusion to express what he puts forward as no more than the mere hunch that other extrasensory experiences, prophetic dreams, premonitions of disaster, and the like, may also prove to be part of the same faculty. The reader is not asked to accept any of these conclusions unless he or she finds it necessary, but the evidence that Rhine has piled up must remain impressive. In the view of Dr. Rhine's announcement in connection with the conditions under which the mind responds to what he terms extrasensory modes of perception, I now feel privileged to add to his testimony by stating that my associates and I have discovered what we believe to be the ideal conditions under which the mind can be stimulated so that the sixth sense described in the next chapter can be made to function in a practical way. The conditions to which I refer consist of a close working alliance between myself and two members of my staff. Through experimentation and practice, we have discovered how to stimulate our minds by applying the principle used in connection with the invisible counselors described in the next chapter, so that we can, by a process of blending our three minds into one, find a solution to a great variety of personal problems which are submitted by my clients. The procedure is very simple. We sit down at a conference table, clearly state the nature of the problem we have under consideration, then begin discussing it. Each contributes whatever thoughts that may occur. The strange thing about this method of mind stimulation is that it places each participant in communication with unknown sources of knowledge definitely outside his own experience. If you understand the principle described in the chapter on the mastermind, you of course recognize the roundtable procedure here described as being a practical application of the mastermind. This method of mind stimulation, through harmonious discussion of definite subjects between three people, illustrates the simplest and most practical use of the mastermind. By adopting and following a similar plan, any student of this philosophy may come into possession of the famous Carnegie formula briefly described in the introduction. If it means nothing to you at this time, mark this page and read it again after you have finished the last chapter. The Depression was a blessing in disguise. It reduced the whole world to a new starting point that gives everyone a new opportunity. Shall I stop?
No, I think if you can
Start
keep
the next
going,
chapter?
yeah, because it's kind of all linked.
Okay. Chapter 14, The Sixth Sense, the Door to the Temple of Wisdom. The 13th Step Toward Riches. The 13th principle is known as the Sixth Sense, through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort from or demands by the individual. This principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles. The sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as the creative imagination. It has also been referred to as the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes are sometimes called hunches or inspirations. The sixth sense defies description. It cannot be described to a person who has not mastered the other principles of this philosophy, because such a person has no knowledge and no experience with which the sixth sense may be compared. Understanding of the sixth sense comes only by meditation through mind development from within. The sixth sense probably is the medium of contact between the finite mind of man and infinite intelligence, and for this reason it is a mixture of both the mental and the spiritual. It is believed to be the point at which the mind of man contacts the universal mind. After you have mastered the principles described in this book, you will be prepared to accept as truth a statement which may otherwise be incredible to you, namely, through the aid of the sixth sense, you will be warned of impending dangers in time to avoid them, and notified of opportunities in time to embrace them. There comes to your aid and to do your bidding, with the development of the sixth sense, a guardian angel who will open to you at all times the door to the temple of wisdom. Whether or not this is a statement of truth, you will never know, except by following the instructions described in the pages of this book, or some similar method of procedure. The author is not a believer in or an advocate of miracles, for the reason that he has enough knowledge of nature to understand that nature never deviates from her established laws. Some of her laws are so incomprehensible that they produce what appear to be miracles. The sixth sense comes as near to being a miracle as anything I have ever experienced, and it appears so only because I do not understand the method by which the principle is operated. This much the author does know, that there is a power, or a first, or an intelligence, which permeates every atom of matter and embraces every unit of energy perceptible to man. That this infinite intelligence converts acorns into oak trees, causes water to flow downhill in response to the law of gravity, follows night with day and winter with summer, each maintaining its proper place and relationship to the other. This intelligence may, through the principles of this philosophy, be induced to aid in transmuting desires into concrete or material form. The author has this knowledge because he has experienced it. Step by step through the preceding chapters, you have been led to this, the last principle. If you have mastered each of the preceding principles, you are now prepared to accept, without being skeptical, the stupendous claims made here. If you have not mastered the other principles, you must do so before you may determine, definitely, whether or not the claims made in this chapter are fact or fiction. While I was passing through the age of hero worship, I found myself trying to imitate those whom I most admired. Moreover, I discovered that the element of faith with which I endeavored to imitate my idols gave me great capacity to do so quite successfully. I have never entirely divested myself of this habit of hero worship, although I have passed the age commonly given over to such. My experience has taught me that the next best thing to being truly great is to emulate the great by feeling and action as nearly as possible. Long before I had ever written a line for publication or endeavored to deliver a speech in public, I followed the habit of reshaping my own character by trying to imitate the 9 men whose lives and life works had been most impressive to me. These 9 men were Emerson, Paine, Edison, Darwin, Lincoln, Burbank, Napoleon, Ford, and Carnegie. Every night over a long period of years, I held an imaginary council meeting with this group, whom I called my invisible counselors. The procedure was this. Just before going to sleep at night, I would shut my eyes and see, in my imagination, this group of men seated with me around my council table. Here I had not only an opportunity to sit among those whom I considered to be great, but I actually dominated the group by serving as the chairman. I had a very definite purpose in indulging my imagination through these nightly meetings. My purpose was to rebuild my own character so it would represent a composite of the characters of my imaginary counselors, realizing, as I did early in life, that I had to overcome the handicap of birth in an environment of ignorance and superstition. I deliberately assigned myself the task of voluntary rebirth through the method here described.
Cool, thank you, Tracy. That's perfect.
You're welcome.
I love that chapter. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, I think I was driving and I had the audio playing and I was like, did he just say what I think he just said? He has meetings with ghosts, basically. And this is the part that was, I don't know if you guys were on the earlier Hangouts, but we talked at some point about there's been editions of this book which removed this chapter. And this is known as the woo-woo version. Because for a long time they didn't put this in. So by chance, the copy that we've got is actually the full edition with all of this in it. So
it's like the Dead Sea Scrolls of Think and Grow Rich.
The what? Oh, the Dead. Yeah, yeah, exactly. So does anyone want to share anything? Any inspiration they had while hearing this?
I'm thinking of who I want to channel.
Yeah, it does make you think that, doesn't it? Who would that be, Jackie?
The first person who popped into my head was Georgia O'Keeffe. I think we talked about her, that she's an artist that you didn't know. I was going to send you a link to Georgia O'Keeffe.
Yeah.
It's just so weird to me because I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art this weekend, and this is like the longest trip I've ever been in New York where I haven't like gone there right away. I've been here almost 2 months, and I finally went there this weekend. And I took all these selfies of me, and I was like, I'm funneling the energy from the artist into my brain.
Yeah.
Isn't that weird? I was like, I was so into it. I must have been getting ready for this chapter.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
So like Van Gogh and Monet are the people that I would want to channel, and Georgia O'Keeffe. She was like one of my biggest inspirations to get me to actually move to Montana.
Careful if you channel the Van Gogh.
Yeah. You know what? I look at a quote from him every day that hangs on my desk that says, it's something about, if you think you can't paint, by all means paint, and that voice in your head will be silenced.
There's another famous quote from him where he says, huh? I can't hear you. Talking to my other ear.
Oh, God.
But his works were so ahead of their time, so unusual, you know, right? I mean, we look back at them now. I mean, brilliant work, you know.
I live in Van Gogh's the area where he did so much of his later stuff. You know, when he lived in Arles, I'm an hour from Arles, and the fields and the colors and everything it's real. You know, it's here.
Yeah.
How
Something
about you, Sandy?
Jackie, it's what? Sorry.
I said, how about you? What about your person besides Mandela?
Yeah, that's the. Just something I was going to add to what you were saying, Jackie, before I answer that is something that I learnt once is that we don't have to channel everything about someone. You can ask to sort of tap into the most conscious part of that person. You know, like you might want to channel Van Gogh, but not his kind of insane parts. You know, and then we can actually do that. You know, you can tap it, like because even I don't think it's in this book. I think it's Bob Proctor. He actually has a really interesting chapter in one of his books about how a lot of the guys that Napoleon talks about, they were very wealthy, but lots of them had personal problems, like they divorced or they died young or they had like loads of upsets and stuff in there. So his basic point being that, you know, there's more to riches than just the actual money. So what you can do is like ask to tap into to everywhere they were prosperity consciousness, but not the rest.
Okay, because I just added Steve Jobs to my list too.
Yeah.
That's a great choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Abraham Lincoln is one of my favorites. You know, in fact, when I was a kid, one of the things that he said that affected me was he said most people are about as happy as they choose to be. And I thought that was a pretty deep and wise thing, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of a, you know, here's a guy that grew up in a log cabin, right? And he got that, you know?
Yeah, he didn't go to college or anything. I didn't realize that until, and then he became president. It's amazing.
Yeah, he was pretty much by all means, in everyone else's eyes, a loser for a long time. He failed to get into, I think, the state senate twice. And if you can't get into the state senate, you know, that's pretty bad. You're never going to be president. But he proved everyone wrong.
Yeah. Great example of persistence and having faith. Yeah. Is anyone inspired to make a list after listening to this? Oh, sorry, Tracy, go on.
No, absolutely. What you were saying, I was actually going to say one of the names I would add to that is Mark Twain.
Definitely.
That guy was so wise, and he was just so hilarious and just an amazing guy. You know, he got his name because he used to work as a pilot on a riverboat, and I'm not exactly sure what the terminology of Mark and Twain. I think it's the amount of space you have between the boat and the river's edge or whatever. That's where he got his name. But you know, he wrote some of his best works after his wife and daughter died of tuberculosis.
Yes.
Some of his most cynical works as well. But I think he really had a great understanding of the human condition, you know, of people. And he's so quotable. He's as quotable as Napoleon Hill any day.
Yeah.
In fact, you know, actually, if the person that you choose to channel, right, if you go and study their quotes, sometimes that's a way of kind of bringing them into you a little bit, I believe.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and one of Mark Twain's quotes that I forget where I heard it recently was that he said there are thousands of excuses for failure, but not one good reason. I may have butchered it a little bit, but it was something like that.
Yeah, it's true. Well,
I'm wondering if I should put him on my list.
Yeah,
check it out.
Great one, yes.
What about you, Geraldine? Is there anyone that you would put on your list?
Frida Kahlo was coming into my head, actually.
I was just thinking, I wonder if there's any more women that would come on the list.
Yeah. She's probably one of the most creative people I know. Like, she was so prolific in her art, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Who'd you say? Sorry, I didn't hear it.
Frida Kahlo, right?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And she was so fiery. Like, she was really just didn't care what anyone thought, which is what I love about her, too.
She was very much herself, like, you know, I think that was very important to her.
Yeah. And it's funny when you think about it, because I was thinking, I wonder if I would like, I love Maya Angelou, and it's so funny because now that she's passed,
great.
you know, you couldn't exactly ask them to come and be on a nightly meeting with you when you're alive. But it's
But I
funny.
bet you would.
Well, this is really woo-woo, but I guess I was thinking, isn't that strange that now that she's passed, I would think about putting her on a list like this, and I would actually perhaps expect her to come, because I believe that as a ghost, that they can be in so many different places at one time, and they just kind of flit in and flit out.
Maybe
Yeah.
you could hire her as a ghostly personal assistant.
I think she's probably just chilling out right now, though. Probably doesn't want to come back too quickly into the world.
Maybe a personal advisor. I'm
There
not
you
sure
go.
about
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if they can be in so many places at once, that's the kind of person you want. Somebody who's really, really talented.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a film. Have any of you seen Afterlife with Matt Damon?
No.
It's a good visual representation of this kind of idea, actually, because it's all about a guy who is very psychic and can see ghosts all the time.
And that's Matt Damon?
That's Matt Damon, yeah. He plays him
Okay.
really well, actually. It's funny. I saw it dubbed in French, but oh no, it was in English with French subtitles. But he, I won't give it all away. I'm quite bad at doing that, so I should probably just stop right there.
And then
But,
he died. Oh no.
But there's just some really good scenes which sort of show that the best ways that I've seen that have helped me on.
Cool.
So it's quite sad though, the film, but ultimately uplifting.
So what's your list, Sandy? I mean, if you
Good
can give us
question. I don't
more
really
than
have one.
Mandela and Maya Angelou.
Yeah, like they would definitely be on there. It's probably Mary Wollstonecraft. Like, I can't even say her name. She'd probably be so annoyed she wouldn't want to be in the meeting. But she's really inspiring to me because she was very poor, extremely poor in London in the 18th century, and the normal path for a poor woman at that point was to go and work as a maid in a rich family. And she started to do that, and then she was like, I'm not doing this. And so she left, and she began writing, and she got like odd jobs to fund it, but she eventually wrote one of the most important books about women's rights, and she literally had such a horrible lifestyle, but she just carried on, so I'd ask her.
I thought of another one, and for some reason I keep coming up with men. Bill Hicks, he was a stand-up comedian in the 80s, American, and he was one of the first, what do you call it? I'm trying to think of the type of comedy, observational comedy. And he was very political, but he was very spot on. He was kind of like, and now I can't think of the name of the other comedian who died a few years ago, who had the seven words you can't say on TV.
Yeah.
George Carlin.
George Carlin.
George Carlin, yeah. So George Carlin and Bill Hicks, it would probably be quite a round table, and Mark Twain. It would be probably chaos, and it'd have to be Google Hangout, and I'd have to have a mute button for each one of them.
Yeah, that's
But
enough now, George.
Bill Hicks, you should look up Bill Hicks. He only lived to his late 30s. I'm not sure what happened to him, but the guy was he was up there with George Carlin, and if he was still alive today, people would still be talking about him.
Did he have long hair, Tracy?
Bill Hicks, no.
Oh, okay.
He was kind of a clean-cut guy, very average in all aspects except his comedy.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look him up then. But I like the idea of having like comedians on there too, and painters and people that not just kind of businessmen. Although Napoleon's list also included war people, Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yes.
Yeah. Huh. Well, I think I might make a list.
Yeah. Hey, let's add this to the page.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like a homework for anyone who wants it. Cool. Okay, well, thank you for reading, Tracy.
No problem. One thing I wanted to mention is in the reading I found it kind of interesting that when they did the tests on clairvoyance, that they
Yeah.
said it worked a lot better when they were on some sort of stimulant. I'm not sure
Yeah.
what they were using, but kind of curious.
Yeah, I was wondering that.
Probably just caffeine.
Yeah. Probably not drugs or
Never.
or cocaine or something. Yeah. Because alcohol kind of slows you down, so that's
Right.
I guess a
But
lot of
caffeine
wine.
does give you a little boost. Yeah.
Yeah. I've heard people say that I've heard Richard Branson talk about a time when he took mushrooms and he went to a party and then everyone around him was it made his psychic awareness about 1,000 times bigger. Basically, he doesn't say that, but he just suddenly saw so many crazy things. His girlfriend is like a dwarf, and after they had to break up. It's really funny in his autobiography.
It can be hallucinogenic.
Yeah, I think it was hallucinogenic drugs that he took, or mushrooms, or something like that. I wouldn't recommend that, but it was amusing to read. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for watching. Whoever's watching in the future, and see you all tomorrow.
Au
Okay, have a
revoir.
great day, everybody.
Thanks for reading, Tracy.
You're welcome.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tracy.
See you.
Bye-bye.